Hi, I'm Andy, your digital host at HubWord United Methodist Church. We know your week can get busy, so whether you missed us on Sunday, are just joining us for the first time, or just want to watch the sermon again, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you're new, the HubWord will include about 20 to 30 minutes of the most important part of Sunday's sermon. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to church.
Good morning, greetings. My name is Dave Tulke, and I'll be reading from the Common English Bible. I always forget what that CEB stands for. Common English Bible, from the second chapter, from 2 Peter, chapter 3, verses 10 through 13. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief. On that day, the heavens will pass away with a dreadful noise. The elements will be consumed by fire, and the earth and all the works done on it will be exposed. Since everything will be destroyed this way, what sort of people ought you to be? You must live holy and godly lives, waiting for and hastening the coming day of God. Because of that day, the heavens will be destroyed by fire, and the elements will melt away in the flames. But according to his promise, we are waiting for a new heaven and a new earth, where righteousness is at home. May God add a blessing to the reading, hearing, and understanding of these words of Scripture.
Today I want to begin with this question of life on other planets. I mean, certainly you've wondered about that, right? And it's interesting because throughout most of human history, human beings have thought that Earth was the center of the universe. And we learned about this a little bit last week. And so people weren't afraid of aliens coming from some other planet, because there were no other planets that there might be life. And so they weren't worried about it. Instead, they were worried and were afraid of the people who actually lived on the other side of the mountains from them. And so there was no sense of foreigners from other civilizations on other planets. But as we begin to understand that there were actually other planets, we began to wonder, well, if there really are other planets, I wonder who lives on them. And suddenly, we had Martians and Venusians, and certainly there were people who lived on the moon as well, right? And so it made me remember, and I wonder if you guys all remember seeing the very first sci-fi film ever made back in 1902. You probably don't remember it personally. But I've seen it many times, and it was from France, and it was called A Trip to the Moon. And I'm going to show you here just in a second a short clip from it. And I encourage you to keep your eyes peeled, because here you're going to already see that there is a sense of who the aliens are and who they might be and how we might be in relationship to them back in 1902. So take a look. All right. I mean, how many sci-fi films have been made since then, right? I mean, that have to do with this same theme of aliens among us, or going to other places and meeting aliens, and they're trying to attack us or arrest us or go to battle with us. And finally we defeat the enemies, the aliens, and we come back to Earth, or we survive here on Earth. I mean, that's the makings of great sci-fi, isn't it? But my hope is that's not a reflection of what's real. Now, certainly in our solar system, there are no other life forms like ours. It may be that Mars and Venus had some kind of microbial life eons ago, but today none of our planets are habitable except the Earth for life forms such as ours that we know of. And now I want to remind you that across our galaxy, just our Milky Way galaxy, there are 300 or 400 billion stars in our Milky Way. And it's estimated now that there could be as many as 100 billion planets that are orbiting those stars. And of those, there could be maybe as many as 60 billion Earth-sized planets that are orbiting in what's called the habitable zone. And the habitable zone is this place around the solar system that a planet must reside in order for it to be able to support a life force. And so let me just show you here. This is a NASA image of the habitable zone. And we got that up there? Yeah. And so this is not actually our solar system, but it's very much like it. And so you see here that you get too close to the sun and you end up with a planet that is too hot. It can't support life. And you see there, it might be something like Mercury or Venus in our solar system. And they both have this daily high temperature of around 800 degrees. Actually, it's 800 on Mercury and 867 degrees on Venus. It's the hottest planet in our solar system. And so it's too hot to be able to support life. And then you can actually move out away from the habitable zone and it becomes too cold. Now Mars is right on the edge of that, and Mars during the daytime, during the summer, it gets to be about 68 degrees in certain places, a nice balmy temperature, right? Especially today. But that same location, it might drop down to about 119 degrees below zero. And so you recognize these huge fluctuations in temperature, and it makes it harder to support life. But Mars actually could someday be an outpost for life. But if you come back to this drawing that you see, there's this habitable zone and this perfect, and sometimes it's called that Goldilocks zone, where life could develop on a planet. And so how many of those kind of planets are there out there? And by the way, it takes more than just being a habitable zone. There's a whole lot of other factors that are needed, such as some kind of liquid. It requires an atmosphere to regulate temperature, or a source of energy like sunlight. Essential chemical elements even, like carbon or hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, or phosphorus. And I mean, it requires a whole host of things, which are the right building blocks of life. So I've been exploring the SETI Institute's research, and SETI stands for a Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and it's the work of SETI that seems to have found, they haven't found any solid evidence as of yet in their search for life on other planets. But doesn't it seem, and I think it was Carl Sagan who wrote this into the script for a 1997 movie, Contact, if you saw that the universe is it's a pretty big place. And it seems a terrible, terrible waste of space if humans are the only life forms, the only civilized life intelligence in the entire universe. And Dr. Frank Marchus, he is this planetary astrologist, a senior researcher there, and he wrote this in June of last year. He wrote, "Here we are, alone in space on a spaceship we call Earth. I am disheartened. I thought by now we would have found our cosmic brothers and sisters to share our challenges, our joys, and our defeats with. But no, We are floating in this galaxy, arguing about our tiny lives and wasting the time that could be used to make us a better civilization. And so, I mean, it would be miraculous, wouldn't it? But what do you think? Life on other planets? Perhaps. Well, okay, so what about all of the claims that there are aliens who come to our planet? Well, these used to be called UFOs, unidentified flying objects, and today they're calling them UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. And I mean, when you think about UFOs or UAPs, do you think that there are actually aliens here, visiting among us? Well, now, just to be aware, the distance from here on Earth to our next closest star, Proxima Centauri, which lies outside our solar system, and it's called a red dwarf star, the distance from here to there is 4.25 light years away. And that is considered super duper close. I mean, in order to get there, though, to that next star, which we don't believe has life, but if it did, it would take us, if we were traveling at the speed of our fastest spacecraft, the speed that can travel right now, it would take us over 60,000 years to get to that star. And that's our closest neighbor. So it's not a huge surprise that we might not have seen things from so far, but what do you think? Are they visiting? Maybe they have better hyperspace technology than we have, or maybe they can get here quicker. You know, I saw an interview with Dr. Marchus about what he thinks about the claims that there are UAPs, or aliens among us, and ships that come here. And this is what he had to say. He said, UAPs, The problem we have with UAPs is that astronomers like me, who have in our network more than 15,000 telescopes each, all pointed at the sky, we don't see them. So it's a bit surprising that the people who observe the sky on a daily basis don't see them, but they are being seen by military aircrafts. And so it's kind of a mystery. My explanation is that there is a lot of activity in our atmosphere which are created by humans that we don't know about. And so we confuse them with alien civilizations. Well, like Dr. Marchus, it seems like such a vast distance for people to travel from other civilizations. I mean, they would have to be so advanced to be able to travel in ways that we can only barely imagine right now. And it would be a needle in a haystack around 100 billion suns and 100 billion planets to even find us. So I tend to be a little bit more cautious about the thought that there would be aliens among us, but who knows? Maybe so. So, all right, so all this is interesting, and I know I've given you a lot of facts over the last few weeks, and again, you might say, where's the sermon in all this, Pastor Lauren? I mean, all I've heard is about UFOs and aliens, and that's all interesting, but I came to church. So let's talk about church. Let's talk about faith. So some people find the possibility of there being life on other planets disturbing to their faith. They like to think that the Bible talks about us and humanity, and we're the kind of the center of everything there. And to them, it feels like it kind of diminishes their faith to imagine that there's life on other planets. But for me, that's not something that actually diminishes my faith. It's quite the opposite, actually. You may remember back when Moses stood in front of that burning bush, that God's chosen name for God's self, when Moses said, "What's your name?" God said, "My name is Yahweh. I am that I am." And when we say, well, what kind of name is that, I am? God is, in essence, saying, I am being or existence itself. Everything that exists is contingent upon me. Everything that exists derives its existence from me. I mean, that's a very powerful way of thinking about God. Even the Greek poets said the same thing. In God we live and move and have our being. So if God is the creator of the entire cosmos, which is what Christians and Jews believe, that God is the creator of the entire cosmos, and we see God's artistry all around us, and we say, wow, when I see the works of your hands, what are we that you're even mindful of us? If God was willing to create us and to start this story of humanity on this one little planet, isn't it possible that God might also like to write another story or even other stories somewhere else across all the other galaxies? Friends, it's the same God who's creating all these things. And the same forces and the same physics, the fundamental forces of physics that God set into motion are at work all across the cosmos and the entire universe. So no, it doesn't diminish my faith. It expands my faith to think God might be doing this in other places. I can't be certain. I'll probably never know until perhaps we get to heaven, in which heaven might look a little bit like Star Wars or Star Trek with all these creatures from all over the place who are our neighbors in heaven. Can you imagine that? So that leads me to the question of what would we do? Or how would we act if aliens actually did show up here on our planet? So remember, the aliens in the ancient world were not people from other planets. They were people from the other sides of the mountains. And the word alien comes from the Latin word alias, which means other. So these are the others. Those other people of other religions or other races or other cultures or other languages. You know, the people who look or act differently from us. These are the others. And as humans, part of our sinful nature is othering. And it's looking at other people and it's diminishing them. It's being afraid of them. It's looking at ways to oppress them or sometimes create little groups to keep them out. I mean, it's 1,000 ways in which our sin manifests itself when it comes to the alien among us, the others among us. And I think about this when it comes to aliens from outer space. If there were aliens who came to our planet, I mean, if they managed to make it here, they studied us carefully, and they did all the right things to try and reach out and have contact with us. I wonder, how would we respond as humans? I mean, what do you think would happen if tomorrow, there were a spaceship that landed on your lawn or in your community? I mean, what would happen if there were multiple spaceships? What if they came in peace? That's what they said. What would we do as humans? I mean, our nature is to be afraid, isn't it? I mean, to be fearful of the other. And in our fear of the other, we become naturally paranoid. And so we're going to be afraid. I mean, what if they're trying to control us? And what if they take over? And what if they bring armies of people? I mean, what if they bring a deadly disease? I mean, the fear factor is real. It's going to be there. And so part of what we need to do is what Christ does in our hearts, to lead with love and not fear and hate. So in the video I saw with Dr. Marches, when he said how he thinks people would respond if aliens came, he said, well, I think we've evolved enough that we'd be able to handle it. And what do you think? I mean, I guess I'm too much of a realist. This is where, as religion, we talk about the fundamental condition, the human condition. And I fear if you look over history, that we don't have a very good history with people on the other side of the mountains, or the other side of the prairies, or the other side of the oceans, or people of another race or religion or tribe. I'm afraid we'd do the same thing here. That's part of why I think religion is important. I mean, it's not just in case the aliens might come from outer space, but the idea that our fear can lead us to do terrible things to other people, right? And certainly we live in a time when we make generalizations about those other people. I mean, I think about the people coming across the border and our generalizations that these are all terrible people, that are all criminals. when most of them are simply moms and dads that desperately want a life that's better than what they had before. They're running away from situations that are fearful, and they're really just trying to figure out how to survive, whether they're coming from Latin America or they're coming from Somalia or somewhere else. I mean, these are human beings. And so it's easy for us to be afraid and then to make other people afraid and then to use them as a cause and a vote in an election somewhere down the way, as opposed to saying, wait, these are people. These are human beings, right? And I wonder if we wouldn't do the same thing with aliens. So I went back to the Bible to see how many times aliens are mentioned in Scripture. 132 times the Hebrew word for alien is mentioned in Scripture. 132 times. And again, that was about people that lived on the other side of the mountain. These are the others who were from a different culture or race or religion or whatever it might be. And so here's one of the passages, and this is kind of typical of the passages. This one's in Leviticus 19, 33 and 34, and this is the NRSV translation. It says, "When an alien resides with you in your land, you shall not oppress the alien. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as the native born among you. You shall love the alien as yourself. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So whether it's talking about the people who are other from us here on earth or fellow human beings, I mean, if we can't do this well with our fellow human beings, how are we ever going to do it when somebody comes from another planet? And I think this is true in our neighborhoods, where we live, I mean, in our own communities. We separate ourselves from one another. And so what the gospel is calling us to do, both in the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Bible, or Christian gospel rather, is calling us to do, is not to lead with fear, but to overcome our fear with love. We lead with love. Okay, so when I think about this image of leading with love, I'm reminded of a movie that came out in 1982. And this film became the highest grossing film of all time, and it held that title for 11 years. And it was about a spaceship with some aliens, some extraterrestrials who landed in California in the woods. And they're in the opening scene, the spaceship lands, and they're botanists, and they're going to find out about plant life on our planet. And all of a sudden, there are these folks who are in their pickup trucks, and they're chasing after these creatures, and they're frantically trying to find their way back to their spaceship. And as these trucks are gathering around this ship, all of the creatures, all of them get back to the ship except one, who didn't quite make it. And this ship takes off, and it leaves this poor little alien behind. And fortunately, that alien manages to escape. And then there's this little boy, and he's about 10 years old, and his name is Elliot. And Elliot takes him in, Elliot and his friends. And they help him, and they teach him, and he just wants to get home. So the creature teaches Elliot and his friends how to create an instrument so that he can phone home. You remember it? Now the government's also looking for him, and the people in their pickup trucks are looking for him, and everybody wants this creature so that they can dissect him and take him apart. But it's Elliot and his friends who lead with love and protect him. And you get to this final scene, and he manages to contact his planet, and the spaceship comes back, and this ET, this extraterrestrial ET, asks Elliot to come with him on the ship. And Elliot says, "No, please stay here." And there's just this beautiful moment. And, you know, I just thought you might enjoy seeing this final clip once more. Just take a look. I love that film. And this little Elliot led with love, and so did E.T. I mean, it changed everything in that film. But wouldn't it be totally amazing if we as people of faith, if there were aliens who actually showed up, wouldn't it be amazing if we would be the ones that would stand up for them? Wouldn't it be even more amazing if the aliens who are currently in our midst, people from other cultures and other races and other religions, if they felt that love from us? And this is part of what Jesus has come to do, to rescue us from, right? I mean, it is our natural tendency towards fear and towards hate, towards missing the mark and straying from the path. Jesus came to rescue us and set us on our feet and set us back on the right path again. I mean, that's what Jesus came to do. All right, so that leaves me to shift gears one second and to how will the world actually end? You know, so I spent a lot of time reading this week about how the world would actually end, and it's always fascinating, as well as a very morbid topic to some. I mean, how is it all going to end? But everybody agrees that indeed the earth will end. It's going to be a long time into the future, billions of years from now, but the earth will end. So let me just remind you of what astronomers and astrophysicists and cosmologists tell us. They tell us that our sun is the kind of sun that will eventually burn through all its fuel. And as it starts to do that, it's going to expand and it's going to become a red giant. And now, as it's starting that process, about 3.7 billion years from now, it will put out enough heat, just move over just enough closer to the Earth that all of our oceans will be evaporated. And now, there will be no more life on our planet about 3.7 billion years from now. But long before then, scientists say that we as a species will probably be long gone. So it's interesting when you think about how long species lasts. And if you look across the course of not just human history, but across the course of the cosmos, there tend to be events that end up wiping out life. And some of them might be of our own creation. You know, some things people worry about are gamma ray bursts or perhaps a super eruption like a massive volcano. And the last time this happened was about 250 million years ago. And I think that was in Siberia. The thing that most astrophysicists are concerned about are asteroids and comets hitting the Earth. And every year there are pretty good size asteroids and sometimes comets that cross the orbit of the Earth. I mean, that could happen. It's large enough and it could destroy the entire planet someday. All right, these things could happen, but scientists say you really don't need to worry about all that stuff because there are a lot more dangers that are way more imminent than that. Things like nuclear war or terrorism. These things are things that could wipe out our planet. We think of the creation of viruses that could become pandemics that make COVID-19 look like a case of the sniffles. I mean, they could wipe out vast numbers of our civilization on planet Earth. I think about the other things like climate change, which has the possibility of having a catastrophic impact on life as we know it today. Or even artificial intelligence, AI. What's going to happen as artificial intelligence continues to mature? And so all of these things, most of which we're going to end up doing to ourselves, which again leads us to ask the question, so what do we need to change? How do we need to live our lives so that it's not inflicting pain on our planet? So the apostles actually believed, they thought that the world was going to come, end of the world was going to come, and they thought it was going to come sooner rather than later. And they weren't fearful of this, they just actually anticipated it with hope, which is interesting. And in the Gospels, Jesus talks about cataclysmic events in the heavens or in the signs in the heavens, and they believe that sometime in the not-too-distant future, the world as they knew it would be destroyed. And there would be a new heaven and a new earth. Listen again to 2 Peter. On that day, the heavens will pass away. This is on the day of the Lord. On that day, the heavens will pass away with a dreadful noise. The elements will be consumed by fire. Well, that sounds like astrophysicists talking here. And the earth and all the works done on it will be exposed. Then he asks this question. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what sort of people ought you to be? And listen to his answer. You must live holy and godly lives, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of God. Because on that day, the heavens will be destroyed by fire and the elements will melt away in the flames. But according to his promise, we are waiting for a new heaven and a new earth where righteousness is at home. You see, those Christians never thought that their planet was their permanent home. They always knew that there was another. They anticipated that there was something more, that the end of the world was not the end of life for them. It was only the end of this particular life. You know, friends, for all of us, whether these things we've talked about destroy us in our lifetime, and I suspect that none of them will, however, the one thing we do know is that the world will come to an end. And the Christian gospel says that this is not the end. It is just the beginning. So listen carefully to these words from the book of Revelation. In Revelation 21, it says, Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the former heaven and the former earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Look, God's dwelling is here with humankind. God will dwell with them, and they will be God's people. God will be with them as their God. God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. There will be no mourning, crying, or pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. Then the one seated on the throne will say, Look, I am making all things new. You know, look, it's often said that we don't know what the future holds, but we do know who holds the future. And we don't live in fear. But we are still aware of the fact that this is not our permanent home. And we are aware of the fact that we might live in fear, or we can live by faith. We can put our trust in God, or we can look around us and see, when is that asteroid going to show up? Or when are the aliens coming? Or when is it going to happen? And what's going to happen on this planet? But what Christian faith calls us to do is to put our hope in God, put our trust in God, walk with God, and do not be afraid. And so as we close out this series, you get to decide. You can live in fear, or you can live in faith. The creator of the cosmos came to us in Jesus and invites you to walk with him and invites you to know God's love and God's care for you and to live that kind of love in faith. Friends, may that be so. Amen. Friends, in mystery and grandeur, we see the face of God. In earthiness and in the ordinary, we know the love of Christ. So may the triune God, the beginning, the end, and the everlasting one, make you shine like the sun, bearing the light of God in all your days.
Thanks for joining us for the HubWord. If you want more content like this, you can go ahead and click our profile down below and then go to our YouTube video page. That's where the rest of the HubWords will be, and you can watch those there. Also, make sure to check us out on social medias like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok by searching HubWord UMC or HubWord United Methodist Church. That's all from us. Have a great week.